Well, surrender means going from a house where the air conditioning isn't working to a house where the air conditioning is working. No, that is not what it means. But that's a fact. There's so many nice things to say about that topic. I'm just scanning the nice things to say about that topic. One of the nice things to say about that topic is what Krishna says to Balaram, that I heard Prabhupada say it, but I didn't know the context till I read Krishna book. Srila Prabhupada said, then the Krishna book version, Srila Prabhupada said, our life as devotees of Krishna should be conducted in such a way that by our association we can encourage people to dedicate their whole life to Krishna. And if they are not prepared to dedicate their whole life to Krishna, then give some of their wealth to Krishna. And if they're not prepared to give some of their wealth to Krishna, they can use their intelligence in somehow serving Krishna in some practical way. And if they're not prepared to give some of their intelligence to serve Krishna in a practical way, they can at least give their appreciation of the devotees. And then he went on to say, it's our discredit if through our association people say otherwise. Oh, the Hare Krishna people are bad. But if they simply say, oh, the Hare Krishna people are good. Now that's service, but it's the mood of surrender is doing something so that Krishna is pleased. The dedication of commonly body, mind, and words, Tanavan Manobhir, in Krishna's service. Just like these little, surrender means that everything belongs to the source of everything. And this house, where'd the house come from? Or where did anything come from? And that from which everything comes, that's the place where this thing, or everything belongs, is the proprietor of. And surrendering means return that property back to the proprietor, to the owner. It's a mood. My thoughts are also going to a nice talk I heard recently by a nice devotee. I think I'll not say his name. He was on one of your podcasts. the Sheshatvam Prabhu. You remember. Indicating the one of the primary qualities, or the primary quality upon which all other qualities or characteristics of a devotee rests, is the quality, the tvam, having the quality of service. And the quality of service indicates surrender unto someone who's superior, and surrender to someone who's superior with feeling, with love, with bhakti. So isn't it that it is, Krishna indicates, we're honoring someone because it's the nature of the soul. We have faith in someone or something because it's the nature of the soul. And surrender means to connect that which is the nature of the soul to that which is the source of everything, with a sense of gratitude. And the sense of gratitude, when it matures, becomes a sense of love. Gratitude, Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes that gratitude is yet the immature stage. And the mature stage is where one does what one does with a mood of love. And that's what real surrender is. Surrender begins in some place because there's someone who is superior to each one of us. Without going through all the examples, everyone has something, and there is someone that has more something, and so forth. We're not independent. We have someone who we're answerable to, subordinate to. And honoring that person who you're subordinate to is respect. And respect with some gratitude for having received something that's a little bit beyond, but the mature stage of surrender and the mature stage of gratitude is love. And when the stage of love is reached, it's nice. It's spontaneous. So one may, in the preliminary stage, surrender because it's the right thing to do. A cultured person will honor something that has been received, and the feeling of gratitude, and reciprocating with that feeling of gratitude is, well, looking across the room at Nityananda Pran, who likes Ramayana very much, more than likes. He has a love for Ramayana, at least. And there's Krita Gya, and there's Krita Gha. The Krita Gya is where one recognizes a favor that one, or some kindness that one has received, and one wants to reciprocate with gratitude in one's heart for what one has received. You familiar? It's a nice example. I'll give the nice example. The nice example is when Hanuman is crossing the sea, there are some obstacles. When you're doing anything, there's always obstacles. The first one is a favorable one, where the ocean personified had received a favor from an ancestor of Lord Ramachandra. And the ancestor of Lord Ramachandra was a king who, when he was searching for the missing horse, he had his 1,000 sons dig up the earth, and they expanded the vastness of the ocean, searching for the horse. But then later, Agastya Muni became angry and was going to dry up the ocean. So Sagara filled up the ocean again. So ocean personified was feeling gratitude to the ancestry of Lord Ramachandra. He wanted to do something because of a sense of gratitude. And so he requested Mainaka, yes, to rise from the ocean and give Hanuman a resting place, because he had a long journey, 800 miles, big jump. So he rose from the ocean with also a sense of gratitude, because the father of Hanuman, Vayu, had helped him. When a period of time came that the mountains were able to move, in fact they had wings and they could fly, Indra didn't like it, so Indra was shooting thunderbolts to break off their wings. So Mainaka was protected by Vayu, said, you just take shelter in the ocean, the thunderbolts can't harm you. So that's what he did. So he wanted to repay the favor that he had received from Vayu, from Hanuman's father. So he wanted to do something for Hanuman. So it was teamwork. And the mountain that rose said, this is the essence of Sanatan Dharma. I like that section. The essence of Sanatan Dharma is to feel gratitude for those from whom you have received some favor, krita, and you want to extend some service in kindness to them. So in one sense, that's surrender, but a higher sense, it's gratitude, and a higher sense, it's love. And the opposite is After Sugriva received the kingdom, he became a little complacent about his promise, although he had made a pledge to help Ram and Ram to help him to retrieve their wives. He became a little complacent, and Lakshman reminded him with bow in hand, "You made a promise, and you haven't." And he spoke in the words of Brahma, who was also ungrateful in some circumstance and condemned the person. "You're unworthy. You're fit for punishment," because one who is ungrateful for some kindness received is fit for punishment. You should be punished. So the topic is surrender, but surrender means unto whom? Because when it's cold, the weather here has been pretty crazy. Anyway, what are you going to do? Except because it is what it is. You surrender to the weather because it is what it is. You make some arrangements. You get a house that has AC that works when it gets hot. I won't tell you what the arrangement is in the house that doesn't have AC. It's kind of funny. But you surrender. What can you do? So unto whom are you surrendering? It's just there's circumstances of life, but then the surrender is to a higher purpose than just accepting the circumstances of life, and even the favors and disfavors. What Mainaka says, this is the essence of Sanatana Dharma, but even beyond Sanatana Dharma is the platform of love, and it's surrender that's spontaneous. Until we get to the spontaneous stage, we surrender because it's duty, it's appropriate. And so there's someone who we look up to, and we surrender to them. We have to be a little circumspect about those who we surrender unto. What's the qualification of those who we surrender unto, etc., etc. Therefore, some scriptural training and some education, some good culture, association of qualified devotees. I'll just share one other thing, then I'm going to ask my dear godbrother to say something because it was his topic. But just a little sharing. I've been spending some time on a topic that's really high in preparing for the Memorial Day weekend retreat. I was a little intimidated to enter into Manashiksha because it's really high literature. But on the other hand, it's the essence of our teaching. Bhaktivinoda Thakur calls it a padati. It's a path to be followed for Gaudiya Vaishnavism, in his words. And the person that's speaking this and writing this is Raghunath Das Goswami, our Prayojana Guru, teaching the way of spontaneous devotional service. And what's our eligibility for spontaneous devotional service? Even taking a peek at it, what's our eligibility? I got encouragement from Urmila, because she did the book. She said it's good for everybody. It's there's things in that literature that's for just ABC beginning people, but depending upon one's adhikar, one can. Same with surrender, depending upon one's stage in spiritual evolution. Surrender means different things at different stages, and coming to the stage where the final verses, all of the preceding verses up to the final verses. There's only 11 verses. The preceding verses are the internal cultivation that makes one qualified. And then the final verses is the spontaneous stage. But before the spontaneous stage is preparing the groundwork, the internal cultivation to orient the heart and the mind and our words to the goal of life, and those who can assist us and get there, and the obstacles that are standing in the way, and to take assistance from those that can help us overcome the obstacles to get there. It's a nice book. Nice absorption. Because I've been absorbed in it, I have to speak about it. Then I have to live it. Surrender, right? Surrender to spontaneous devotional service. Welcome, guys. That's what we're doing. We're followers of Rupa Goswami are following that path. Followers of Lord Chaitanya are following that path. He's the giver of that standard of surrender, where Krishna is everything. We're far from there, but the journey is a wonderful journey, especially in the company of nice devotees who are also striving, maybe struggling, but striving to get there. That's our life. That's nice surrender. I'm handing the ball over to you. You take the microphone. Stand.
Oh, I had no idea. I wrote it one. Spontaneous. Hare Krishna. For those who don't know, my name is Kripamoya, humble Vaishnava from London. I've never been to Chicago before. But my wife, Guru Charanapadma, she lived here for 2.5 years. And every day, talking of surrender, went out to O'Hare Airport and sold Srila Prabhupada's books. Yeah. And I gather that Prabhupada was very pleased. Your name was read out to him, and she was the top book distributor in the world at that time. Yeah. But enough of her. We have one of the biggest festivals coming up, and as well as being the festival of the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev, it's the festival of Prahlad Maharaj as well. I heard a story about Prabhupada the other day, that this is something about Prabhupada's surrender. Prabhupada knew the story of Lord Nrsingadev, all the details. He told everybody in the movement the story. But when it came time for the devotees to celebrate that day in Vrindavan by putting on a play for Prabhupada, they chose one of the pillars of the newly constructed Vrindavan temple to be the pillar from which Nrsingadev would burst. Now, that one pillar near where Prabhupada was sitting was surrounded by a bamboo screen. Now, of course, all the devotees knew what was going to happen, because we know the story. Prabhupada knew what was going to happen, because he knew the story better than us. However, Prabhupada was so surrendered to Krishna, so actually surrendered to Lord Nrsingadev, that he entered into the pastime. He entered into the pastime. He suspended his disbelief that he was sitting in a temple room with his devotees, And he entered into that Leela. So that when the bamboo curtain was ripped apart and Lord Nrsingadev came out, Prabhupada was visibly shocked. His entrance into that pastime was complete. And this is what it is like for a pure devotee of the Lord, that your consciousness changes and that which appears to be material becomes spiritual. That the Lord raises your consciousness and you can see things that are there. This is my daughter Janavi, as you know. And when she was 8, she came to me with Tulsi's also here. They both came to me with a booklet of designs generated by a computer. And they said, "Daddy, can you see the 3-dimensional dolphin?" I said, "No." It just looked like squiggles like this carpet. He said, "Look, you have to look very carefully, you'll see the dolphin." And I looked this way and I looked that way. And they were laughing. They said, "No, you have to change the way you're looking." And so I looked towards the checkout counter. We were in a supermarket. Checkout. They say that here? Checkout?
Yeah.
Yeah, checkout. Very slowly I raised the image. Boom. There it was. 3-dimensional dolphin. I saw it. I saw that which I couldn't see before because I retuned my vision. Small example, but in Krishna consciousness, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to retune our vision of the world and everything in it according to the platform of surrender. And surrender means service. See everything from the point of view of service. And if we do that, we'll be able to experience the platform that Prahlad Maharaj was on. It's not easy, but it's something that Prabhupada has asked us to. In Mathura, where Lord Krishna was born, there's a beautiful temple, and they've painted extracts from the Srimad Bhagavatam, not pictures, but verses all the way around in big letters. And they're Prabhupada's translations. So Prabhupada put, nice, yeah. So Prabhupada gave us Prahlad Maharaj and Dhruva Maharaj as 2 wonderful examples of surrender. I was told by one South Indian Acharya, he said that Prahlad Maharaj was asked a series of questions. They asked Prahlad, "How did you manage to survive everything? How did you manage to survive snakes being put in a pit of snakes?" And he said, "You know this one?" He said, "Snakes." He said, "My father goes to sleep on a snake every night. Lord Narayan is my father. He sleeps on a snake. Snakes are my father's bed. So I have no worry. Like sleeping on my father's bed." So they said, "But what about poison? How did you survive poison?" He said, "Poison? Poison is my auntie." They said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Because when the milk ocean was churned, Lakshmi came, or the poison came, and then Lakshmi came. So the poison is my auntie. She's born from the same place." He said, "Oh, very good." And they said, "But what about fire?" He said, "That's an easy one." He said, "Fire is my father's tongue." Oh, Vishnu Jiva. So in this way he counted everything. Prabhupada said that Prahlad Maharaj could see God because of his surrender, even where God was invisible. So he saw God everywhere, even though God was invisible to the eyes. But Hiranyakashipu could not see God, even though he was directly in front of him. He said, "Where is your God?" And another Acharya said, the pillar that Hiranyakashipu was pointing to was called the Vijay Stamba in his palace, and it was a beautiful pillar into which the heads of all the opponents that he had conquered had been carved. So it was this pillar that the Lord came out. Prabhupada at one time, he said, when Prahlad Maharaj looked at the pillar, he saw Lord Nrsingadev, and Lord Nrsingadev winked. You know? It's just, you say Prabhupada said he winked. Yeah, he said he winked. Yeah. Don't ask me to quote chapter and verse. So that's okay, thank you, Maharaj. I'm not that surrendered that I remember chapters and verses. So the Lord came out of the pillar. We know that part of the story. But he said, oh, who is this? What is this? Same reaction as his brother. His brother saw God personally. Hiranyaksha saw God personally. He said, oh, what is this? An amphibious beast? and Hiranyakashipu looked at Lord Nrsingadev, couldn't understand. So for those who are unsurrendered, Krishna is always out of their reach. But for those who are surrendered, Krishna is always visible to them in everything that they do. It's magic. I was, we had an issue with Americans. I don't mind telling you, I'm British. We had an issue with Americans. They were bigger than us. They sold more books than us. They were sort of the authority figures in our movement for many, many years. Still are, Maharaj. And this was 1977. So us British boys, we would always get pushed to the back. So on one morning I decided that I would push through this American throng that was around Prabhupada. This was in Mayapur during the festival time. So on that particular day I was sitting right in front of Prabhupada, and he raised his hand like this, his left hand. And with his right hand he said, he was giving a lecture about, from the 7th canto. He said, so Lord Nrsingadev's, his finger was going like that. He said, Lord Nrsingadev's fingers are like chisels, but his palm is very soft. He says, so the palm is soft for the devotees, but the chisel, like fingers, are for the demons. And so his point was that we just have to choose who we wish to be. If we take shelter, and take shelter means to understand that I won't be disappointed. I will not be disappointed. That's a hard thing, isn't it? To feel that I won't be disappointed. What if I surrender everything and it's not true? That's the hard part, isn't it now? What if I surrender everything and it's a nice collection of stories, it's a nice collection of ideas, it's nice philosophy, but what if none of it is true? Then what do? I've surrendered my life to this. Prabhupada said, just surrender. Just surrender. Krishna will not disappoint you. He said one time in Edinburgh, Prabhupada looked at the devotees and he said, do you think I would tell you fairy stories? So when we surrender to Krishna, another time in Edinburgh, Prabhupada just finished the lecture, and a shaft of sunlight came out of the clouds. Edinburgh is very grey and cold, overcast, drizzly. A shaft of sunlight came through the clouds and illuminated Prabhupada's face, and the devotees went, wow. Prabhupada just smiled. He said, when you become Krishna conscious, it is just like that. Illuminated. Hare Krishna. Feel my thoughts. Good. What comes next, Maharaj? What did they tell you you were coming to here tonight? You got told there was a few. But I think there's something else going on in the family this week.
There was no mention.
Oh. Well, normally what we would do, we would have a short fire yagya, and then we would have 5 people go around each room in the house, I hope, it's respectable up there, so we can go around each. That's right. And we throw some water in the four corners of each room, some rice in the four corners of each room, and Maharaj will be chanting auspicious mantras like Hare Krishna. And someone will blow a conch shell. And I will be sitting down here eating, because of course, Vipramukya Hutai, feeding through the mouth of the Brahmins. But is that all right, Marge? Anything else you would like to? It is a party. All right, let's have a fire yagya party. Fire yagya is the minimum we can do to bless this house. And Namruchi, would you? You're a Paka Brahmin, aren't you? Huh? Are you a Brahmin? He is a Brahmin. He is a Brahmin.
Take the adjective away.
Okay. So you can do the fire yagya? You can put the ghee on.